What's up, Ivan?
Hey, good afternoon. How's it going?
Doing well.
Excellent. Just getting set up here, about to go live. All the channels.
Cool.
Goman did not ask for the CLS data. I didn't put anything in there. Go and automatically stream now. Am I streaming to all the sites? Yeah, looks like I am. Okay.
Yes, yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Ivan here, Apartment Ninja Warrior. Great to see everyone. It is Monday afternoon, and it is our weekly tactics talk. And so today I'm going to be talking about the top 5 apartment turnaround tactics that I'm using currently in order to get our apartments on the other side of any operational challenges that you may be dealing with, not only operationally, but financially. There are plenty of operational and financial challenges that we are dealing with. You may be in a situation where you have high delinquency or you have tenants not paying rent on time. You have property management challenges where maybe you hired the wrong company or the current staff that you have working in your property are not operating the property to your level because of the high interest rates. You're having financial challenges where you unable to maybe cover all of your debt or all of your payables, and you see your payable balances start to increase. And so this is definitely a unique time that we're living in today. A lot of these operational challenges stem from the COVID crisis, where the government was issuing basically free money and rent checks for tenants to live off of, and tenants got used to living off the rent money up to the point where that started running out earlier last year, and delinquency balances started to build up, and then a cascade of continued ongoing challenges resulted from that, where the attorney offices were unable to keep up with the eviction process as well as the court system, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Additionally, COVID created a challenge on the labor pool, and something we need to be aware of when it comes to trying to find the right people working in your properties, and property management companies trying to find the right people. So I'm not here to sugarcoat anything, but I am here to provide some solutions. I'm here to provide some key operational insights on how we can still navigate through today's current environment. And so with that being said, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to kick this off. So again, today we're going to be talking about the top 5 turnaround tactics that I'm currently using to operate my properties with the utmost efficiency available to us today. So the first one I want to talk about is exposure control. And we need to understand what this term exposure means. Ultimately, exposure is any economic event that will result in a loss, any type of economic loss at a property. What are these economic events? Could be someone putting a notice to vacate. Could be someone skipping out. Could be someone just simply choosing not to pay rent. It could be bottlenecking at the construction side where you're not able to produce enough units in a timely manner. And so you don't have any units to rent out and collect rent money, income on. It could be personnel issues at the property management level where you don't have people showing up to work or not being as productive as you need them to be. And so they're not being productive at the property level and staying on top of collection, staying on top of leasing. All kinds of various reasons why you can have exposure at your property. But what I'm going to focus on here is first thing is renewals. When you're going through the renewal process, we need to be able to have forward-looking glasses on and determine what our future occupancy is going to be, our future exposure is going to be, to determine how aggressive you want to be on the renewals. And there's some tools that you can use for that. If you have a ResMan, if you're using ResMan, there's a projected occupancy report that you can pull inside of ResMan that looks into the future and understands all the scheduled move-ins versus move-outs and has a projected occupancy thereafter if all else stayed the same. Meaning if you have no more scheduled move-ins, no more scheduled move-outs, and you follow that schedule throughout the course of the year or the next couple months, this is what my projected occupancy is going to be. And based upon that, and coupling that with understanding of the future evictions you may have, which will create even more exposure, then you start to go in and try to understand how aggressive you want to be on your rent renewals. And in today's time frame, especially because we're winter, and two, because there's a lot of delinquency going on, our year-over-year rent growth is declining, and there are concessions that are coming into the marketplace. So let me ask you, in this current environment, does it make sense, high level, macro level, to be very aggressive on renewals? Probably not. But you still have to go through the process and understand how aggressive you want to be. And the way I do that is using a simple spreadsheet. Well, you go out and you pull a lease expiration report. So we currently in this analysis, we're looking at the March renewals. We throw up the lease expiration dates for all the March renewals there and the current rents for each of these tenants. And then we compare that to the market rent, in which we do through a market rent survey. And then we understand what is our true loss to lease or even gain to lease. Loss to lease is negative, gain to lease is positive. So you can see here that the market has decreased compared to where we were a year ago. And that has a lot to do with just recessionary type environment. Also with the supply demand curve, we're currently entering into a season where we have hundreds and thousands of units coming online. I think I saw reports 700,000 and 800,000 units coming online this year. And especially in Salt Lake City, where this property is, there's a lot of units coming online. And so that naturally is going to lower the market rent rate. And you couple that with all the delinquency that is going on in the marketplace with all the evictions, again, that also is going to lower the rent rate because you have now a lot of vacancy. So a lot more tenants on the streets, even though they may not be qualified. There is more supply than demand. So the market rent has decreased. So we're going to go in, we're going to analyze and see how aggressive we want to be on our rent bumps. And we're going to couple that with our projected occupancy based upon our forward-looking glasses that I talked to you about. And in this particular case, the 29th of the month, which is today, right? So I believe today's 29th. Just this week. And you can see that we're relatively strong on the future projected occupancy. But if we saw a report like this, where the projected occupancy was in the lower 80s, and keeping in mind if I have a lot of delinquency or evictions that are about to happen, maybe I don't want to be as aggressive on my renewals. We look at this on a case-by-case basis and then determine our future rent bump based upon projected occupancy and future exposure. In this case, we only did a $5 increase here, $10 increase, $10, $15 increases, which is not a lot compared to what we were doing a year ago, where we're getting $200 bumps on our renewals. But we have to control our exposure. We have to control our vacancy loss. And we have to minimize lease trade-outs. And so we're not going to be as aggressive, and we're going to do what we can to keep these tenants on site and keep them in place. So we're only going to go up $5 to $10, for example, and raise the rents from the current rent to these new rent rates. And these are new rent rates that went to market to the tenants, to see if they want to renew or not. And so that is just one example of a process that we use to be able to determine what type of renewal rent rates we're going to advertise and how we're going to control our vacancy loss and minimize our exposure as a result. So again, I talked about a few other ways to create exposure here. Notices to vacate, personnel issues, and understanding projected occupancy. Another thing I want to point out here is that in this particular case, in beginning of the year, January 1st, we had lower projected occupancy. And we knew that the market is starting to decrease, and January historically is one of the slowest months when it comes to getting new leases, because it's cold just after Christmas and the holidays. Nobody has extra money to move. And so also we had quite a few units starting to build up on availability report, and our concessions around $500. So we had to actually increase concessions, which is not the best thing to do, but we can't let vacancy loss just happen and accrue on our income statement. So we increased our We increased our concessions. This is market driven. Increased our concessions and started to get the property full. And that's how we went from a projected occupancy in the 80s to projected occupancy in the 90s. Now, you're going to say, well, you're not going to have a net increase because now you have concessions. You have additional loss through a concession. Yes, but we're now stabilized at 95, and the next month, those concessions that we see building there should burn off, and our vacancy loss will then be decreased, and we'll have a higher income as a result because we're minimizing our vacancy loss. And the one thing I want you guys to get away from this discussion today is minimize vacancy loss. Minimize vacancy loss. Minimize vacancy loss. Vacancy loss is the biggest killer to any income growth you have, and you have to manage your rent rates and your concessions, assuming you have good product. Assuming you have good product and you took care of everything on the physical side, the operational side. The only other governor you have, the control mechanism you have, is the rates that you set forth on the property, and do such to be able to minimize your vacancy loss. Just walking through an example of vacancy loss versus rent bumps. A lot of the previous cycle, the mentality was rent bump, rent bump, rent bump, lease trade out, rent bump, rent bump, rent bump. That mentality has changed, again, because of the decrease in the market and because of all the extra supply. We have to be more conservative with our capital dollars as well, and it costs so much more to rehab the interiors of these properties, to rehab these interiors. We have to be even more fine-tuned with how much capital and investment we want to put in the property to get an ROI on our investment. And so I've now switched to mentality of now holding on to my capital dollars, not pumping money into the property, and minimize the vacancy loss and focus on renewals to preserve our capital. And just doing a quick math problem here and walking through this example. So you had one unit that on a classic condition, it rents for $1,000. If you renovate it, you can get an additional $200 for going from $1,000 to $1,200. It costs $10,000 to renovate this unit. If that property sits vacant for 2 months, you're going to be losing $1,200 because the renovated rent rate is $1,200 for 2 months. It's $2,400 you're going to be losing, rather. For example, again, $200 rent bump, and then it would take you 12 months because it sat there for 2 months. It would take you 12 months to make that money back, because it would take 2 months to renovate. You would have 10 months of it being rented out. 10 months at $1,200 a month is the same as if you just let that unit get renewed at its classic condition and rent that for $1,000 for 12 months. If you increase that to 10 units, then your rehab cost goes up by order of tens, up to $100,000. And you realize that you actually would have saved money by just rehabbing or renewing that unit as is, keeping a classic unit, then renovating it and trying to increase the rent because of that vacancy loss, because of the vacancy loss. Unless you're extremely good at the execution side of things, and you can execute and renovate a unit and get it leased before the second month starts to happen, maybe you would only lose $1,200. But then you still have to look and see if you're going to get a significant return on your investment. If you can renew that unit within 1 month and keep your renovation costs low, maybe then it would make sense to be able to do that. But there's a lot of execution risk in that. And given it's a challenging environment to find good work and being able to do this in a cost-efficient manner, it's more risk at stake and more challenging to be able to try to renovate. So I like to lean on more renewals than lease trade-outs in our current environment. Another example here is if you just renew one unit, the renewal rent rate again at classic is $1,000. And if it didn't have to sit there and get renewed, you would actually gain $2,000 more and you would lose $2,400 with zero vacancy loss, and you didn't spend any money to rehab that unit. If you increase that by order of 10, everything goes up by order of 10. So again, 2 months rent, now you would gain $20,000 versus losing $24,000. And how many times have those that have owned apartments and operated apartments where you bring on a construction company or you try to keep in-house maintenance to rehab 10 units within 1 month. It's definitely doable. I've been able to rehab 15 units all within 30 days and cut my costs 10 to 15%. It is doable when you have your machine up and running, but there is still a lot of exposure to risk. And so the safer bet, the safer play, especially when we need to reserve your dollars to pay for your higher interest costs, is to focus on renewals. So when you put these two examples side by side, you look at a lease trade out plan versus a renewal plan, the value increase is about the same. And you can increase the value, say, by $180,000 if you're using that 6% cap rate and analyze that rent bump, $12,000 there. But it's going to cost you more to get the same value increase. So again, lens for the argument of renewal is a better route to go than a lease trade out. So that's what I wanted to focus on there. Just wanted to kind of keep that more high level. Lease trade out doesn't always make sense. Execution is everything and minimize a vacancy loss, but retention is key, especially in today's environment. And in light of us having to preserve our capital dollars to pay for the higher interest costs. And it just costs so much more to rehab these interior units. So as asset managers, it's our job, it's our role to communicate this to the property management level, to the regional, and help them understand where you stand on the capital preservation side and how much runway you actually have available in your capital account, whatever you want to let them know in that regard, so they can make effective use of dollars and so that you can get your entire team in sync and aligned to understand that renewals are so important. And when you do that, it really emphasizes the importance of creating culture, emphasize the importance of the property management team and leasing team be very aggressive and proactive in getting those lease renewals to make sure they're getting out of their seats, they're engaging with the tenants, they're creating that cultural environment so that tenants actually want to stay at the property. They actually enjoy wanting to live there. They actually find the place a good place to live that's clean and functional, safe, and someplace that they enjoy being at every day because they like being around the leasing staff. So that's a little bit about exposure control, a little bit about the execution side and the operational side. Let's move on now to a little bit more about renovation again. Yeah, just focus on this a little bit more. I already kind of talked about this, but turnaround tactics is kind of the focus again, right? Capital preservation. You're going to need that extra capital to pay for your higher interest costs, especially those that got into the market, say the past 2-3 years, we have higher interest rate costs. Hold on to your capital and only rehab the property if the occupancy is at above around 95%. You do not want to expose yourself to all the execution risk where you're taking 10, 15, 20 units offline and putting a construction team on those units, assuming that they're going to be able to execute and turn all those units in a very efficient manner. They can, it's possible, but there's a lot of risk involved. You better make sure you have your ducks in a row and your systems lined up to be able to do that effectively. I have a system and process for that. I can definitely talk to you guys offline and teach you the system I use, the roadmap I use to do a full-scale renovation on the interiors where we're still turning around 15 units per month and still saving around 15 to 20% on costs. But there are a lot of key things you need to be able to put in place to be able to do that. One thing I do is I have a construction team that lives on site. They work Monday through Saturday. So that's what I'm going to touch on there on the renovation piece. Moving on here, going back to the property management company and the GP team improvement, meaning the relational improvement here, and really talking about the relationship side of things. I'm just going to camp on this for a second. So as an asset leader, and really the mindset should be you are an asset leader, you're not an asset manager per se, you're a leader of a team, you're in charge and responsible for the overall execution of the business plan. I'm always evaluating the strength and health of my team. When I'm on site, I'm on the KPI calls, I'm understanding what's going on in this person's life, because the stronger my manager is, the stronger my maintenance team is, the better the property is going to perform. Plain and simple. Because the stronger my regional team, the stronger the property manager team is, the better my property is going to perform. I'm always looking at Manny, making sure I have the right footprint in place, the right people in place. And I'm looking in the eye. I'm listening how they talk. I'm hearing how they respond to questions. I'm seeing if they're able to continue to think ahead. If they can't think ahead of a property or understand the questions I want to ask and know the questions I want to ask over time, it makes you want to question and wonder, do they maybe they're not an organized person, there's not systems and processes put in place to help them stay ahead of things, or maybe they simply have too much going on their plate and they don't have enough support that they need in order for them to be able to do their job. It's really important that we stay ahead on this. And after doing this for quite a few years, people are really good at hiding things. They really are. But people are really good at not telling you the complete picture or telling you the entire full picture, the truth, if you will. And so you got to be very sensitive to this and very keen on this. And something that I continue to learn and grow through the longer I do this, and the more I do this, and the more I find how people are able to hide things or keep things from you. So that involves regular visits, that involves being on the phone, that involves looking at the data. That involves going 2 or 3 levels into the data. When you're looking at payables, don't just look at the numbers, look at the actual invoices and see if those invoices should be billed to you. It takes a lot more attention to detail than I think most people realize in order to do this job correctly and do it well. Quiz and determine opportunities for improved efficiency. Again, that's about taking your team and leading them to take ownership of the process. Not only you should know the answer of where you want to take the property, you should already have the game plan, but you want to see if they're able to come up with the answer. You want to see if they understand where to take the property to. And you want to see if they truly understand your vision. So quiz them and ask them what they think you think they should do in certain situations, in certain scenarios. Determine if a property management company change is necessary. Some of you may be going through some challenges. I've certainly had my own various challenges. And there's costs to both sides. There's costs to keeping, meaning there's costs to keeping your property management company in place, and there's a cost to switching. And sometimes it's not a very clear answer exactly what direction you want to go. Certainly, you've been in situations where it's not clear, and you're doing everything you can to get clarity because you do not want to make the mistake, one, of making a switch maybe you didn't have to, or two, if you make a switch, make sure you make the switch with the right company, the new company coming in. That may take more time too, to be able to make sure you identify the right company, but you don't have time because if you have a systemic issue, an issue that's going on beneath a few layers beneath that you maybe don't have exact visibility to or understanding of, a lot of damage can get done in a very short time. And so what I can say is, again, go 2 or 3 layers deep and keep your sensor feelies up the entire time. But once you have clarity, don't wait. Definitely go through the process and make the switch. Even though that switch does take time, be expeditious as you possibly can. Add staffing as needed. Sometimes, especially on the maintenance side, it's very challenging to find maintenance personnel these days, qualified maintenance personnel, people that want to stay and actually take ownership of the property. Sometimes you're going to have to bring in outside labor. I really don't like doing that when it comes to the maintenance side or additional help from other properties. But sometimes you need to do that. And you need to be able to present that in a way that's going to help the current staff, help them see maybe it's not their exact fault why they need additional help, because then they kind of get disengaged and they feel disencouraged that like maybe they're not cutting it or meeting up to the expectation, which they may not, but you got to keep them engaged. So how you approach that is a leadership challenge and how you get them to believe in that you need some additional help. But maybe you do need to bring some additional horsepower to push the property along. These are simply functions and tasks that need to get done on a day-to-day basis. These are checklist items. These are engagements that need to be done with people and face-to-face conversations. Just like all the emails that show up in your inbox, you simply don't have the bandwidth to answer and take care of everything that you possibly need to take care of in a single day or live up to everyone's expectations. So then you have to triage and prioritize exactly what needs to get done. And you have to understand the bandwidth and capacity of an individual. And simply, even the best of the best are going to get overtasked or oversaturated with too much work. And in that scenario, you may want to have to find some additional staffing to bring in to push the property along, getting the net result on the back end, meaning it's going to cost some money up front and labor, but you're going to have better top line execution, meaning more income coming in and better preservation of your expenses, hopefully overall as well, as you're more efficient with your processes and you're not being as wasteful with getting things done, meaning when you have say a job, a third-party job where you're going to go out and get bids, you're actually taking time to find the best contractor, the best price, the best product, the best quality. You have a little bit extra time to invest to find that solution versus being kind of hasteful and just going off the cuff and finding the first person you find to fix a plumbing need or an electrical need or a physical need at the property. You can actually get a little bit better return when it comes to focusing on expenses by bringing in extra horsepower. So these are some of the connections I think we miss sometimes when we just see it as an additional cost. We're all focused on trying to save money. We also got to look at how we can make more money by spending a little bit more on better labor or more labor. And that's how I like to look at things. And when we do that, we assume we bring in the right staff, the right help, you do see the result in return on your investment overall. Weekly increased GP presence. Absolutely. If you imagine, again, you're in a deficit situation, your property is going through challenges. You should have already been at the property, on the property multiple times throughout the week, but may even have to increase the frequency. Maybe things were going fine and then you had a little ripple that took place for whatever reason. Again, this delinquency issue where the COVID money ran out and now you have to fight through evictions. You got to increase GP presence. And if you're in a situation where you don't have the capacity to be able to do that, it's critical that you find a way to physically show up at the property. Simply something something is done when you actually take the time to engage with your people and to connect with them and see them eye to eye. You got to create that relationship in the physical realm, in real life, not just through Zoom, not just through a phone call. And so I go to my properties regularly if they need a little extra attention just to keep that connection, keep that presence. And you got to be very tactful and selective on how you approach your team. A lot of these people may be on the verge, they may be a rock star, but they may absolutely hate where they work because of the challenges you're going through. That's where you got to find a way to position this challenge as an opportunity for someone to want to accomplish and overcome and help them be part of a solution versus a problem and keep the team engaged and motivated. That's really our role as asset leaders and how we do that. It could be just through care and concern, could be through by showing understanding of what it is for them to do their job. It could be a little more, sometimes you need to be a little more direct. You need to be a little more, you need to provide a little more direction with the property and a little more stern, if you will. Sometimes you got to crack the whip, if you will. You know, it's a delicate balance and it's a leadership role. And sometimes people need a little more correction, a little more discipline. It just depends on the individual, and it's your job to understand who they are and what needs to be done to help them know how help them at the end of the day is what you need to do. And if they're not willing to be helped, or they have an attitude issue, or they don't want to be there, or they don't want to be helped, then that's a simple solution. You got to find a replacement. But if there are people that are trying and really want to fix this problem, sometimes it just takes a little adjustment on our side and holding on to our frustration or holding on to our disappointment and keep looking at the positive side and keeping the team together and engaged. We got to keep morale high at these properties. And we got to be able to keep some things from the management team where it's not their load to carry, it's our load to carry as asset leaders, and that you just need to keep them focused on the main thing, leasing, collecting, and keep the property clean and functional. So a lot there on that, on GP presence, a lot there about understanding the importance of just good asset leadership skills and working with people overall. Weekly KPI calls, additional regional property manager calls. So I have typically one weekly call and typically don't ever get away with that for the entire holding period. But if things start to get stabilized, I might go to once every other week. Once in a blue moon, I might go to once a month, but I very rarely have ever gotten to once a month. Honestly, it's just about once a week. I have a weekly KPI call. I like to streamline all my communication within that call, have all my action items followed up and checked off during the call, but I'll have additional calls with the regional outside of that just to keep the pulse and to keep things moving along. And so that we have additional emphasis on certain things that we want to get accomplished at the property And keeping those touch points is so critical. I don't like to put a lot, I don't like to send out a lot of emails because they just get lost in the sauce, if you will. We do email communication to try to keep it streamlined and very efficient. Most of my communication and execution is done on all the calls, and I track all the tasks and progress simply through my own KPI sheets, as well as through Monday.com task manager. GPs need to believe in the property, the GP leadership. So a little bit more on that. You're selling your belief and your vision to the management team. They have to be able to hear and feel your belief in the property, and they have to understand what the overall vision is for the property. There's a lot to that in this. It's when the property management team feels defeated. It's when they feel like they have very little to work with. When they feel like they're not supported or backed, when they're confused, and there's a lot of different direction going on, where too many chiefs or too many chefs in the kitchen, if you will. It's like that, and we got to be careful to that. We got to be sensitive to that, but we got to have just one voice, one vision, but one person that truly believes in the property, and you got to sell that vision, and you got to be able to get everyone to kind of come together in a cohesive unit and keep that vision alive. It's so critical and so vital. And you'll notice if a manager feels beaten down or doesn't feel supported, you'll catch it in their posture and their demeanor and their responsiveness on the calls. If you hear that they're nervous or they don't really feel like they know what's going on, there's an issue. There's a personnel issue. There's a leadership issue going on, and that's something that needs to be addressed. And listen, you're going to be throwing curveballs. A lot of times you're going to have difficult people, difficult managers, property management companies that you're working with. You're going to be throwing curveballs, and a lot of times it's not always going to be clear cut exactly what the problem is. It takes a little bit more fact finding and digging, but you still got to get to the bottom of it. And you still got to be able to then transfer that belief to the management staff. I've been in many situations on the other side where I'm working in various jobs and in the military, and it seems like we always had very little resources available to us. We still had to go out and find a way to make it happen. We still had to find a way to get the job done. And I liken this business to that. We have limited resources, and we still have to be able to find a way to get our staff to believe in the project, believe in the vision overall. All right, a couple more here, guys. Transition now to marketing, lead gen. Really about, again, top line execution and focusing on the things that you need to, one, drive more traffic to your property and drive better traffic to your property. And how do we do that? You see their update website pictures. At minimum, you need to have a very good website and functional website with good pictures. Make sure you take those pictures, just like for those that ever sold their own personal residence. You don't want a lot of clutter. You don't want a lot of course, trash. You don't want a lot of things laying around. You want the pictures to be bright and clean and crisp and clear. Real estate's about selling real estate is about the visual side of it. It's really about selling the story too. Can people see themselves wanting to live at this property? When you show a picture of the pool, is it crystal clear and sparkling and bright? Is the sun out and the sun shining? Things like that, they got to be able to see on the website. It's so important that you take time to get that correct. And then you got to be able to set up your various ILSs or lead channels, ILSs, internet listing services, and you got to be able to track and monitor that. So a lot of my properties use a system called Knock CRM, and Knock CRM can attribute or track all the different channels that leads come through and attribute them for the property. Okay. And then what you do is then you can track how many leads you get on specific lead sources and what your cost per prospect, cost per lease, cost per application is. And you may think that is pretty high, which it is. But one thing about CoStar that we found is that CoStar is the broadband exposure tool that we use, where a lot of people go to apartments.com, CoStar, it's the same, to get basic insight and knowledge of a property. And then they may come off apartments.com and then come back through the website and then book a call or book a showing or apply through the website. So there've been many times where I wanted to get rid of apartments.com because it is expensive. And come to find out, it's like one of those necessary things you need to have because of the exposure that's involved. And also, you want to make sure that they're given the most accurate information about your property, which you can kind of pay for. And since they kind of cornered the market and a lot of people now use that, it's one of those necessary things, unfortunately, I think, where you can't exactly get rid of it. Again, though, a lot of the markets have their own various individual tools, more effective in some markets than others. We really got to do a deep dive study and analyze the effectiveness of every single lead channel, and then determine if it is cost effective to keep that channel. Sometimes it's more cost effective to add more to the marketing spend in a particular channel. Sometimes it's more cost effective to decrease. You really want to lower your cost per lead, cost per lease, get that as small as possible. And sometimes that could mean spend a little bit more to get a little more wider aperture, a wider net. You can capture more traffic and better quality traffic and minimize your cost per lead overall. The Google My Business, the Google My Business component for Google is so important as well. The business listing online, really need to make sure that that is dialed in and that you have every single field that requires information. You have it to be accurate and correct. Any discrepancy in your Google My Business listing will hurt your SEO score overall. And you want to implement SEO improvement measures. We're constantly getting higher and higher up in the SERP, search engine results page. When people are looking for apartments in any particular submarket, you want to be top of the bracket as much as possible. The higher you are, the more eyes that will be looking at you. So it's a long game on investing and implementing Google My Business SEO SEO processes, but it's a necessary game. And then the reviews is so important. A lot of your score that is aggregated is weighted based upon reviews. I think 20 to 30% of your score overall is based on reviews. And unfortunately, a lot of people like to give negative reviews because if you're going through a restructuring phase or you're going through like a value add component or you're cleaning up shop, they're going to have a lot of unhappy customers and not used to someone enforcing the rules and holding people accountable, and they're going to vent in your property. All I can say is you got to get more good ones than bad ones, and you got to focus on measures to get people to give you more reviews. How do you do that? A lot of people put QR codes at the desk. A lot of people incentivize their managers to get them better reviews. Anytime I close out a work order and the maintenance person is working with the tenant, make sure you get a review there. And focus on the maintenance personnel. It's one thing that I was going to talk about on the leadership side. Focus on the maintenance team. I think a lot of us we're leaving money on the table because we're focused so much on the management team and not enough on the maintenance team. We forget that the maintenance team interact more, if not, interact with the tenants, if not more than the managers, because they're out there in the field every day, looking at, walking by people, seeing people, working on their particular units, and how well of a job they do in terms of service and fast, friendly, neat and orderly and all of that, like how well of a job they do will determine the overall review you get at your property. And so you really got to build up your maintenance team. You really got to empower them too. And you really got to connect with them, not just with the manager. And you got to make sure your manager connects with the maintenance team and leads the maintenance team well in order for your property to rank high and get really, really good reviews and to improve the culture overall. But again, these tools are very good tools. I'm looking at this every week. And then I'm also just studying this from a big picture standpoint, say per quarter. I want to make sure that my marketing spend is accurate and correct. I'm not overspending or underspending in certain areas. There's also other tools you can use that will look at how many calls you get, how responsive the team is in picking up the calls, how many calls are missed, how many emails are missed. A lot of money is lost, honestly, on the marketing side, where we could do a lot better job in tracking all the calls and stay on top of that. I know a lot of operators and owners have their own office or support staff that they use to kind of supplement this. There's a lot of tools available. I have actually a matrix that I put together. If you guys email me, I can get you a copy of the various marketing tools available out there. And I did a pretty in-depth analysis on what tools are available for each of the third-party services. You got Nux CRM, you got Funneler, you got Zumper, for example. I have a pretty good in-depth research project put together, and I can share with you guys. If you just message me or email, we'll get you a copy of that. But do focus on the marketing side and really emphasize your team to focus on it. And unfortunately, marketing is one of those things that it's like it should be at the top of the list, but it's something I think it gets done at the bottom of the list, where not as much focus and attention, or something that's literally done at the end of the day. It should be one of the first things that's done first thing in the morning. Get out your marketing message, get out your content, make sure you are engaging with your people first thing in the morning, and as a result, you're going to get more quality leads and you get more leads. Last thing, guys, I want to focus on top 5 apartment turnaround tactics is delinquency control. Delinquency control. First and foremost, you want to track your delinquency on the delinquency report, as well as the accounts receivable report. There's a report called delinquency report. And you want to make sure that all this information is correct, and you keep track of the game plan that you're going to have on every single tenant to evict them at the property. And you want to enforce this on a weekly basis with your management staff. And you also probably want to incentivize them where they can keep the delinquent, say, below the 2%, which is my threshold. Then they get some kind of incentive, additional compensation, or whatever it might be. A few things I think that people miss when it comes to understanding the eviction process. Not just the quality health of the tenant, but if you do have a situation where delinquency starts to build up, in this case, when the COVID money ran out, like I shared with you guys, which is something we should have been tracking, of how much penetration you have on people on COVID subsistence programs. So, but where I see a lot of logjam is at the attorney level, not the court level, but the attorney level, where it may be communicated to you that the court systems are backed up, and they were in a lot of these municipalities, a lot of these cities, the courts were backed up. We had everyone that quit during COVID, and you had one judge that came back, and you had all these people waiting in line to get evicted. We're kind of through that now. We're on the other side of that, but the attorneys may be backed up, but they may not have efficient processes, or the back and forth between the attorneys and the managers, the property management team may not be efficient as well. So if you have delays in getting tenants evicted off your property, I would focus on what's going on at the attorney level as well. It's something you need to pay attention to, and see if the attorneys have a portal. A lot of times these evictions, the processes are tracked through a portal, where you don't even have to ask the management team to get access to the portal, and you can see where they are. And if you see there's a delay somewhere, or maybe there's a document that's not getting passed that needs to be passed, then you can troubleshoot that. You can push that through and get visibility on any of those roadblocks when it comes to pushing delinquency control. You got to make sure that the management team has ownership of this, and that, again, they have a game plan for every single person that is going through the eviction process, and make sure it's documented. Every single week, I'm asking about every single person on this report, why they're delinquent, what's the plan to get them cured, what's the plan to get them evicted, where do they stand in the eviction process, has a judgment been granted, has a writ been issued, so on and so forth. Is there stuff out on the street? And once they enter eviction status, then that gets backed into the availability report, in which that unit becomes now available to rent, which adds to exposure control. So it's so important to stay on top of this, so you can, again, manage your exposure, which I talked about here in the beginning of this session. Okay, so just to wrap it up again, today we talked about 5 different ways we can implement our turnaround tactics at the property level. One, which is kind of a broad topic, is talking about exposure control by minimizing vacancy loss, emphasizing renewals more than rent bumps and trade outs. We talked about stopping renovations, holding on to your capital, stopping interior renovations, minimizing execution risk, and keeping our property full, and then anything above the 95% threshold and focusing on those units for renovation, especially in a slower season like now in the winter timeframe. Really talk a lot about asset leadership, emphasizing leadership, make sure you have the right team members, the right people in the seats, and how you engage with each of the team members is so important. Talk a little bit about marketing lead gen and emphasize the importance to have good, clean, crisp pictures, a good website, and make sure all the information is accurate and correct. Another thing I like to add is the phone number. I like to have a different phone number on each of the lead channels. That way you can attribute the lead source. You can track on the back end if someone called this number, then you know it came from this particular source. Someone called another number, it came from another particular source. So that's one way to delineate where the lead actually came from. You can back in and track your cost per lead that way. And then last, we talked about delinquency control, making sure you're just staying aggressive with evictions. You set the standard of the property below 2%. You have a game plan for every single tenant that's going to be evicted, and you stay on top of that. And above that, start looking at your leases. Start reviewing and make sure that the leases that are written are qualified tenants, that no special permissions were given, or no higher level approvals were needed in order for tenant leases applications to get approved. Something we should be paying attention to, because there is the temptation when you're in a low occupancy environment for the manager to go in and just start filling up the property with bad tenants, and that's such a bad tactic. Something you got to pay attention to very, very closely to make sure you can minimize your delinquency and also your vacancy loss. Okay, that's all I have today. If you have any questions about this or like to reach out and talk to me more one-on-one, I will drop in the chat right now my calendar link that you can book a call with me, and we can go deeper into any of the issues that you're having with your property. I'm going to put it in each of the channels right now. And Govind, if you can drop it into the Facebook for me, appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that there, guys, and you can book a call with me, and we can talk about any issues that you're going through, why you might have some vacancy loss issues or delinquency issues or property management issues. I can share with you more of my tactics that I use to keep my properties moving in the right direction. And I just really think it's important that us as a community, one, we talk about our challenges, and two, we talk about our solutions. In order for us to be able to truly get to the other side of this, we do have to, I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit, but we do have to come together. This is not I'm going to keep a secret kind of business. It's really about learning to help one another, even though we may be competitors. But if we think about it this way, that if we all offer up our solutions, how we actually make this business better, we're all only going to benefit from it. And we're not going to be repeating the same mistakes that we made in the last cycle. And the business will continue to elevate and grow, and we'll all win as a result, because I really believe there's more than enough from everyone. And so I'm doing my part, what I can, to improve this business that we're in, and doing what we can to actually make this business a true win-win business where everybody wins. And that's what I really love about this business. That's really what appealed to me in the very beginning when I first got started, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. So I encourage you to reach out, connect with me. I'd love to be able to take a look at what's going on with your properties and understand deeper what we can do to help move your properties along. With that, thank you for watching. Thank you for being here today. Actually, I'll open the floor. Does anyone have any questions at this point in time? Anyone have any questions that's listening in? Go ahead and speak up now, or raise your hand, and we can answer those questions. Otherwise, we will hop off. I'm looking at Facebook. I don't see any questions there. Govind, if there's any questions, maybe you can throw it in chat or point my attention, because I know we have various channels up and running right now.
Sure.
All right. Okay. Just hold tight a couple more minutes here, a few more moments. Anyone an opportunity to ask any questions? Okay. All right. Well, again, you have my call link there. I am on social media. You can reach me through a direct message as well. Appreciate you guys. Wish you the best of luck in 2024. And as always, make sure you take care of yourself, take care of each other, and everyone have a nice day. See you next time.